It's been a while since I looked at an all-AMD pre-built. That's exactly what I've got on the desk today. This is the Zircon Nova R from PC Specialist, and it's all team red, featuring a 9070 XT and a 9700X. It should provide an ideal picture of what you can expect from an AMD-powered machine in 2025. Hi guys, I'm Matt and welcome to Kit Guru. So before we take a look at the gaming on the Zircon Nova R, let's get the pricing on the table for you to bear in mind as we head through the details. The Zircon Nova R costs £1,999 on the dot from PC Specialist here in the UK. For that money, you're not only getting the system, but it's also covered by their 3-year standard warranty, which includes 6 months of collect and return repairs, 1 year of parts coverage and 3 years of labour costs, and then lifetime hardware technical support over the phone. A decent warranty forms part of the appeal of buying a pre-built, and having some peace of mind if you're not comfortable with technical troubleshooting can go a long way. Obviously, the majority of that £2,000 goes on the components that make up the build though. This is what you're going to get for your £2,000. The CPU is an AMD Ryzen 7 9700X, an 8-core 16-thread chip which runs at a base clock speed of 3.8 GHz and can boost up to 5.5 GHz. It's not the most power-hungry processor on the market either, running at a stated TDP of just 65 watts. For graphics, we have the latest and greatest offering from AMD and Gigabyte, a gaming OC variant of the 9070 XT. Now, for any of you that want an in-depth look at the new AMD graphics cards, then check out Dominic's very detailed analysis. We'll leave a link in the description box down below this video. To summarise the card briefly for this video though, the Gigabyte Gaming OC 9070 XT features a max game clock speed of 2520 MHz, and then you've got a max full boost clock speed, which it will only hit momentarily, of 3060 MHz. And that's alongside 16 gig of GDDR6 memory with power topping out at 304 watts TDP. Memory comes in the form of a 32 gig kit of Corsair Vengeance RGB, running at 5600 megatransfers. Expo was enabled out of the box, I didn't have to tinker with anything. The CL timing on this memory is 40, that's not the greatest of speed or timings there. 6000 megatransfers and CL timing in the region of the low 30s would have been nice to see. It kind of feels like this was the cheapest option that they could stick in there that had RGB. Testing it with Ada resulted in read speeds of around 58,858 megabytes per second and write speeds of around 75,093 megabytes per second. The storage drive is a 2TB Samsung 990 EVO M.2 NVMe SSD, a drive that supports both PCIe Gen 4 and 5, although that 5 support is limited to just 2 lanes, so it doesn't really lead to any real-world performance gains. The system came with the slot set to auto in the BIOS, which results in the drive running at its Gen 5x2 sort of setup, and the read and write speeds in that mode were 5067 megabytes per second and 3553 megabytes per second respectively. Manually overriding that auto setting and forcing it to run at Gen 4x4 does see a slight decrease in the read speed at 5038 megabytes per second, but then you get a bigger increase in the write speeds, jumping up to 3739 megabytes per second. As I said, day to day, you're probably not going to notice the difference either way. Unlike the capacity, which you'll definitely notice, I'm pleased to see a 2TB drive. Hopefully this is the standard on all PC Specialist gaming systems from now on all gaming systems from anyone from now on. All 4 of those components are sitting in a Gigabyte B850 AORUS Elite WiFi 7 motherboard. This is an ATX AM5 board which features 3 M.2 slots covered by a giant slab of a heatsink, which in my opinion looks very, very good. It's one of the nicest looking boards I've had my hands on for a while, to be honest. There's AORUS branding across the VRM heatsinks and some no doubt AI inspired graphics on that SSD and chipset heatsink slab. As the name suggests, it has wireless connectivity on board, being compatible with Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 5.4. Then for rear I/O and features, there's a DisplayPort, a Q flash button, 4 USB Type-A 2.0 ports, 1 USB Type-C 3.2 Gen 2 port, 5 USB Type-A 3.2 Gen 1 ports, 2 USB Type-A 3.2 Gen 2 ports, a 2.5 Gigabit Ethernet port, Wi-Fi antenna connection ports, and then both 3.5mm and SPDIF audio ports. So that's 12 USB ports in total, a decent amount that is, and that should serve even the most USB hungry of people out there. Keeping the lights on and everything spinning is a Corsair RMx 850W ATX 3.1 power supply. This is a Cybernetics Gold certified unit with fully modular cabling and native support for 12 volt high power. It also features a manual fan override dial which can be used to crank the 140mm fan to the max and push more air through the power supply and into your case if you want to, or you can leave the dial in its off position and it'll be in auto mode and it'll act more like we're used to seeing on more standard, I suppose I could say, power supplies. For cooling, starting with the CPU, we have a PC Specialist Frostflow 150 series air cooler. No AIO like we're used to seeing in most, if not all, of the pre-builts I've looked at on the channel in the past. The cooler has dual 120mm fans pushing and pulling air through the cooling fins. The cooler's quite a tight squeeze up against the memory and the GPU, but then again, I do think it's quite satisfying with how precisely it seems to fit with the chosen components. And for general cooling, there's 2 140mm ARGB fans at the front for intake and 1 120mm ARGB fan in the rear for exhaust, all of which are the pre-installed fans that come with the case, a Lian LanCool 205 Mesh C. This is a pretty compact mid-tower case which semi-bucks the fishbowl trend, which in itself is pretty refreshing to see, in all honesty. The front panel is completely mesh, providing plenty of breathing room for air intake to the fans that I just spoke about. This particular LanCool 205 has been given the PC Specialist branding treatment in the form of a badge at the bottom of the front panel and some etching on the inside of the side glass. Now, any of you that have seen my videos in the past will know that I'm not a massive fan of over-the-top branding, and at first I didn't like that etching on the side glass panel, but in all honesty it's grown on me and I don't mind it too much now. The PC Specialist branding on this machine has been kept semi-stylish. They're about at the limits of the amount of branding that I like to see on something. One thing I really like about this case though is the pretty aggressive tint to the glass side panel. It diffuses the RGB quite a lot and stops it looking too tacky. Front I/O is threefold. You've got a pair of USB Type-A 3.0 ports, a USB Type-C port, hence the C in the name of the case, and then a pair of audio ports for input and output. Alongside the power button, there's a pair of buttons for controlling the RGB, one for switching between some static colours, and then the other one for switching between some kind of preset modes like rainbow and that sort of stuff. Overall, I really quite like the looks of this build from PC Specialist, the Zircon Nova R. It's understated and everything seems to complement each other really nicely. I love the compact design of the case and it's refreshing to see an air cooler used. The cable management has all been done to a very good standard with plenty of cable ties keeping everything in place around the back, which was kind of needed as the back panel of this case isn't the most premium piece of metal that I've ever touched in my life. All in all though, I like how this PC looks and it's been built really well. Finally, before we jump into some games then, the only things I've done to the machine before testing was to update Windows and install the latest graphics driver. Other than that, it's as it comes out of the box, including having Norton antivirus installed. If this were my PC, uninstalling Norton would be the first thing I would do before installing anything else, before updating anything else that's going. On to gaming then, starting with 4K performance in Assassin's Creed Shadows. Running through the game's built-in benchmark with maximum settings and ray tracing as low as it'll go, saw FPS of around 50 to 60, sometimes dipping into the 40s. Now this is a very new game with stunning graphics. If it were me playing it, I'd dial down the settings or add a touch of upscaling and enjoy it at 60 FPS. Moving into Cyberpunk 2077 at 4K max settings sees marginally worse performance of around 40 FPS through the car chase scene that we use for testing performance in this title. And similarly to Assassin's Creed, this could be pushed to 60 with a few tweaks for a good looking experience. The Zircon Nova R was able to handle Hogwarts Legacy at 4K max settings a little bit better than the previous two games, with FPS sitting around the 70-ish level. Good enough for a single player RPG in my book. I'd be happy maxing the settings and playing through a game like this at this sort of performance level. But how about you lot? Is 60 FPS still acceptable for getting stuck into a single player title? Let us know in the comments. Moving on to Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 then, and performance during the opening crossbow section was just a hair under 60, but then it improved when moving to the ramparts for some sword play, jumping up slightly to between 60 to 70, more than likely due to a lot less elements having to be rendered and displayed in the scene. The final game I tested at 4K was A Plague Tale Requiem, again at maximum settings without any scaling, and performance was similar to that of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, hovering around the 60 FPS level, mostly just under it, but sometimes peaking into the low to mid 60s. Moving into 1440p performance then, starting with Black Ops 6, FPS starts at around the 130 to 150 level during the game's built-in benchmark and remains at that level most of the time. The smoke and fire causes a bit of a dip to around 120, and moving into an indoor environment sees the figures reach 170 FPS at times. Shooting some weird alien bird pterodactyl things from towers in Space Marine 2 saw the FPS meter sitting around the 100 to 120 range. Again, adding fire into the scene sees the performance dip, this time to around the mid 80s. Forza Horizon 5 then, the first of the two racing titles that I tested, runs really smoothly. Performance was between 150 to 170 FPS throughout the game's benchmark run. This is at 1440p maximum settings without any ray tracing or scaling, and the reflections in the game look incredible without any ray tracing. I really should play more of this title. So far then, we've seen all of the games tested at 1440p manage to maintain FPS of 100 plus most of the time. To add a bit of balance, here's Black Myth Wukong at 1440p maximum settings, where performance comes tumbling down to around 60 FPS. However, this is more on the game than the system, I feel. It's incredibly demanding, and the benchmark features more trees than centre parks. Then, to finish off the 1440p testing and show the other side of that coin and just how game dependent a system's performance is, we have Formula 1 2024. Starting the benchmark lap, FPS is around 270 before jumping up well north of 300, hitting 381 for a brief moment. So it just goes to show it's not all on the system. Game optimization plays a big part in how a game performs. Finally, let's take a look at some temperatures, power usage, clock speeds and noise levels then. During a 30-minute Cinebench multi-core run, the Ryzen 7 9700X CPU package power usage peaked at around 88 watts, with temperatures hitting just 63 degrees and clock speeds averaging 4.5 GHz after their initial boosts to 5.5 GHz. The GPU, after around 30 minutes of Cyberpunk 2077, recorded peak temperatures of 60 degrees for the GPU sensor, 86 degrees on the memory sensor, and 82 degrees hotspot. Those different scenarios resulted in the following fan noise. Total system power draw measured at the wall socket was roughly 75 watts when idle, 160 watts when running a Cinebench multi-core benchmark, and around 500 watts when gaming in Cyberpunk 2077. So there we have it then. That was my full review of the Zircon Nova R from PC Specialist. A decent system overall, albeit a bit on the expensive side. Pricing up a very similar spec system on PC Part Picker comes out at £1,865.29 at the time of me making this video, and that's including the GPU being priced at £769, far above the MSRP, if MSRPs even mean anything anymore, but I suppose that's a debate for another time. I've included a Windows license in that pricing too, which most people will already have, so I'm being generous sticking one on the parts list, just as I did with the Stormforce pre-built I looked at recently. The performance of the system was pretty good though. I definitely feel this system is much more suited to 1440p gaming over 4K, which was no real surprise. 4K is possible though, it'll just need some settings tweaks and a bit of tinkering to be a smooth and enjoyable experience. I can't moan about the quality of the build at all, the cable management or the state that the system was delivered to me in. There were no issues to report at all and everything looks like it's been done with a good bit of care. I like the design and the build aesthetics, as I mentioned earlier. It's a good looking desktop that'll look decent on any desk in my opinion. The memory was a letdown. It felt like a bit of a cop-out when compared to the rest of the specs, which aside from that little grumble were pretty balanced and well thought out, I thought. I'd love to see a pricing adjustment on this system though, once the post-launch GPU pricing calms down a bit. As it stands, it's not the most competitively priced system I've ever seen from PC Specialist, but it is decent and it has been built well, and it's all AMD. If that's your thing, then this might interest you. Anyway, guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave me a like down below if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to Kit Guru to keep up with the latest PC gaming news and reviews. If you go down below the video, you'll find links to our merch store and our website, our Patreon page, and our Discord server if you want to check any of that stuff out. Anyway, guys, I've been Matt. This has been the Zircon Nova R from PC Specialist, an all AMD desktop. I will speak to you in the next one. Look after yourselves. See you later.